I'll write the story in a reusable document format suitable for YouTube narration. Writing. I walked into my apartment. And my roommate said, "We need to pretend tonight." The moment I opened the door to my apartment that bright afternoon, I knew something was wrong. Not because the place was messy. Not because anything was broken. But because my roommate, Rowan Mercer, was standing perfectly still in the middle of the living room, staring at the door as if he had been waiting for hours. His face was pale, his hands trembling, and there was a fear in his eyes that I had never seen before. Then he looked at me and said something that made my stomach drop. "We need to pretend tonight. Before we begin, if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to LifeLine Vibes for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end." For a few seconds, I simply stood there, confused. The afternoon sun streamed through the apartment windows, painting golden rectangles across the floor. Outside, people walked through the city as if it were just another ordinary day. But inside our apartment, the air felt heavy. I had lived with Rowan for nearly 2 years. We weren't best friends, but we respected each other. He paid rent on time, kept mostly to himself, and spent most evenings reading books or working remotely from his room. He was calm. Predictable. Safe. That was why seeing him terrified was so unsettling. I put my bag down and waited for him to explain. As the minutes passed, Rowan revealed something I never expected. His younger sister, Elara, was arriving that evening. At first, that didn't seem unusual. But then he explained the truth. He hadn't spoken to her in almost 7 years. 7 years of silence. 7 years of missed birthdays. 7 years of regret. And now she was suddenly coming to visit. The problem was that Rowan had spent those years telling her a version of his life that wasn't real. According to his messages, he was successful. Confident. Surrounded by friends. Living a happy and meaningful life. The reality was very different. After losing his parents years earlier, Rowan had slowly isolated himself from the world. His career never became what he hoped. Most friendships faded away. Anxiety followed him everywhere. Eventually, pretending through text messages became easier than telling the truth. Now his sister was coming to see him in person. And she believed she was walking into a completely different life. That's why Rowan looked at me with desperation and said he needed help. Just for one evening. He wanted me to pretend we were part of a larger group of close friends. He wanted the apartment to feel warm and full of life. He wanted his sister to leave believing he was okay. At first, the request felt ridiculous. But when I looked at him, I didn't see a liar. I saw someone drowning in loneliness. And loneliness can make people do strange things. So I agreed. The next few hours became a blur. We cleaned every corner of the apartment. Rowan bought flowers. I called a few coworkers willing to stop by for dinner. We moved furniture around. We filled shelves with books and photographs. The apartment transformed from a quiet space into something that looked lived in and loved. As evening approached, I noticed Rowan becoming increasingly nervous. He checked the clock every few minutes. His hands shook. His smile looked forced. And beneath all the pretending, I sensed something deeper. He wasn't afraid of being exposed. He was afraid of losing his sister forever. At exactly 6 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Everything stopped. The room became silent. Rowan stared at the entrance. For a brief moment, I thought he might run away. Instead, he took a deep breath and opened the door. Standing there was a young woman carrying a small suitcase. She looked exhausted from travel, but her eyes immediately filled with tears when she saw him. The years between them seemed to disappear. And in that moment, I realized something important. Despite all the lies, despite all the silence, she had come. Because somewhere deep inside, she still loved her brother. The evening began awkwardly. Everyone played their assigned roles. My co-workers laughed. Stories were shared. Dinner was served. Music played softly in the background. From the outside, it probably looked perfect. But I could see the tension. Every smile Rowan gave felt fragile. Every conversation seemed carefully controlled. And Alara noticed. Throughout the evening, her eyes lingered on him. Watching. Observing. Trying to understand. As darkness settled outside, the city lights flickered to life beyond the windows. The apartment glowed with warmth. Yet a storm was quietly building. Around 9 o'clock, something unexpected happened. One of my co-workers accidentally mentioned a detail that contradicted one of Rowan's stories. It was small. Almost insignificant. But I saw Alara's expression change instantly. A crack had appeared in the illusion. And once cracks appear, they spread quickly. The rest of the evening became increasingly uncomfortable. Questions emerged. Details stopped matching. Explanations became harder. The carefully constructed life Rowan had built through years of messages was beginning to collapse. Finally, after everyone left, silence filled the apartment. Only 3 of us remained. The city hummed softly outside. Cars moved below. Distant sirens echoed through the streets. Inside, nobody spoke. Then Alara quietly asked a question. A simple question. But one Rowan couldn't answer. The truth had finally arrived. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then something remarkable happened. Rowan stopped pretending. The walls he had spent years building suddenly fell apart. All the confidence disappeared. All the carefully crafted stories vanished. And for the first time, he told the truth. Not just part of it. All of it. He told her about the loneliness. The depression. The failed opportunities. The panic attacks. The empty weekends. The nights spent wondering whether anyone would notice if he disappeared. Every painful detail poured out. Years of hidden suffering finally found a voice. I sat quietly and listened. And so did Alara. Tears streamed down Rowan's face. The strongest person in the room had become the most vulnerable. Yet somehow, he looked freer than he had all day. Because carrying the truth is difficult. But carrying a lie for years is even heavier. When he finished, the apartment became completely silent. I wasn't sure what would happen next. Maybe she would leave. Maybe she would be angry. Maybe 7 years of distance would finally become permanent. Instead, Alara stood up. She walked across the room. And she hugged her brother. Not a polite hug. Not a quick hug. The kind of hug that says everything words cannot. The kind that tells someone they are forgiven before they even ask. And suddenly Rowan broke down completely. Years of pain escaped through tears. The burden he had carried alone for so long finally had somewhere to go. I looked away to give them privacy. But I will never forget that moment. Because it reminded me how desperately human beings need connection. Not perfection. Not success. Not appearances. Connection. The following morning brought sunshine pouring through the apartment windows. For the first time since I had known him, Rowan looked peaceful. Not happy exactly. Not yet. But lighter. As if someone had removed a backpack full of stones from his shoulders. Instead of leaving immediately, Alara extended her stay. 1 day became 3. 3 became 5. Together they revisited old memories. Shared meals. Walked through parks. Talked honestly. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they cried. But every conversation brought them closer. Watching them heal was like watching a garden recover after years of drought. Slowly. Patiently. Beautifully. Over the following months, changes continued. Rowan started seeing a therapist. He joined local community groups. He reconnected with old friends. He stopped hiding from life. Not because everything magically improved, but because someone reminded him he didn't have to face it alone. The apartment changed too. It felt brighter. Warmer. More alive. Real conversations replaced silence. Hope replaced isolation. And whenever Alara visited, she brought an energy that filled every room. Nearly a year later, Rowan and I were sitting on the apartment balcony during another sunny afternoon. The city stretched endlessly before us. People hurried below. Clouds drifted slowly across the sky. Out of nowhere, Rowan smiled and thanked me. I told him he didn't owe me anything. But he shook his head. Then he said something I'll never forget. He said that the night he asked me to pretend was actually the night that saved him. Because pretending forced him to confront the truth. And once the truth came out, healing could finally begin. Sometimes life changes in dramatic ways. Other times it changes through a single conversation. A single act of kindness. A single person willing to stay when everyone else walks away. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to LifeLine Vibes. Your support helps these meaningful stories reach people who may need them most today. Special request: comment below with the words, "Truth heals," if you believe honesty and love can rebuild even the most broken relationships. As the years passed, Rowan and Alara never regained the time they lost. No one can. But they built something new. Something stronger. Something real. And that's the lesson I carried from that unforgettable day. The people who love us don't need perfect versions of our lives. They don't need polished stories. They don't need impossible success. They simply need us. Our struggles. Our fears. Our truth. Because sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't pretending everything is okay. It's admitting that it isn't. And trusting that the right people will stay anyway. That afternoon, I walked into my apartment expecting an ordinary day. Instead, I witnessed a broken family find its way back together. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change a life forever.